Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So I'm back today with another Division 2 video, and I am putting out these videos because it is just, something that I'm interested in. And I know a lot of people, have commented that they don't like these videos and all that. And, I guess that's because, people are playing other games and all that. But there are people in the community who want to keep this conversation going. And I'm a Division 2 channel. And so we're going to have these conversations. We have to have these conversations because these conversations, I feel like, will be monumental, not just for the Division game, but for the future. It's just something where as gamers these days, if we don't talk about things that are relevant to gaming, we will have no future. We're just going to have a mess on our hands. Creativity is going to be killed off. Corporate greed is going to ruin the entire franchise. But, the good thing is at least we have the old games to go back to. And one of the things I think, though, that's sad about it is, the talented men and women that put in the time and the efforts to make these games on the, on the production level, they're the ones whose work goes into the trash can. Because many times these corporate entities don't understand how gamers think or choose to ignore gamers and go with another agenda. So one of the reasons I try to give a fair shake to Massive, I don't know what anybody may think, whether I'm too, harsh with them or whatever. I mean, there are other videos out there that are way, way harsher, with Massive and the Division. I mean, I'm softball compared to, some of the stuff that's out here. And I respect, other content creators' opinions. I don't, I feel like everybody has a voice and should say what they're saying. But one of the reasons I give them a fair shake is because the thought about making a video game has actually crossed my mind. And I'm not saying I'm going to make one. I'm just saying the thought crossed my mind. And I'm just saying to you as a gamer, if you eventually decided to make your own video game, what would it look like? What do you think today's internet culture would do to your first video game? Do you think they'll be nice, kind, that it's your first game? Do you think that you're going to face the same challenges that all these other companies do face? Indie games as well. Do you think you're going to face, a lot of the criticism? I mean, yes, they'll probably maybe softball you a little bit, but how do you think the criticism is going to work after spending time and years in developing a game? Now, I'm not saying that the developers at Massive, are going to be developing a game in the same conditions as somebody who's like coming from the gaming community and trying to make their own video game. In fact, I think the reason we critique a lot of the missteps that they make is because they have a lot more resources. They have AAA funding, they have AAA branding, and in the case of the Division 2, they've had multiple years of experience to understand what is really important in a game like this and understand the community. And that's not, so I understand that. But I'm thinking to myself, whenever we critique these video games, or whenever I critique these video games, I'm just going to speak for myself. I sometimes have to sit back and say, if I were to make a video game, design it, implement it, would it be even as good as some of the games that I critique? And, the answer to that is obviously I don't know. I don't know. I would want for it to be better than AAA games. I would want for it to be its own thing. And I would want for it to be able to, do some really extraordinary things. And many of you might wonder, why am I even talking about this whole line of discussion? And, I'm glad you're thinking that. I'm glad you asked. And that's because there is a vacuum in the market for other RPG looter shooters of the style that Tom Clancy's The Division has made, of the style, of the polish, of the execution in terms of design, and how they've created that world. There is a market for that. Now, let me speak freely. So Destiny, a lot of people say they don't like Destiny because they feel like it's something made by Disney. I've seen that. I saw that comment, guys. You all put that comment on my channel, so I read it. Another person said it feels cartoon-like. Another person says that it just didn't get me. And not because Destiny is not a good game. Destiny fits the lore that it comes with. So it's perfect in its own sense. You don't expect them to say, oh, we're doing space ninjas, and now everybody's going to be running around with AKs. It doesn't make any sense. The Division, on the other hand, is talking about secret agents. So that makes sense. So I feel like people want more of the human connection that goes with a game like The Division and The Division 2. That's what The Division and Division 2 actually has. For those of you who may be wondering, why do I like Destiny more than I like The Division, or why do I like Destiny and The Division, is because The Division provides you with a human connection. Ubisoft is very, very good, as that's their core design, that they use human elements that players can actually relate to. They have not said this to anybody, but if I go back and look at all their trending games, they really don't have many games that kind of step off the books. They have some that are out there, but mostly you're going to find out that there's a human element to almost all their games, and that's because that's exactly what they intend to do. And so, that vacuum that's being left open right now will be filled. Somebody will come and fill this vacuum. In fact, I'm optimistic about this, because that's the beauty of our world today. Even in the terms of Destiny, Anthem was supposed to take what made Destiny good and maybe take a little bit of that human element and combine them. But with the corporate agenda, they botched a wonderful opportunity. Instead of bringing a game to market that would work, now they're going back and picking the pieces. And I think EA is actually going to pick up the pieces, because, Battlefront 2, the 2017 one, has actually become a better game. That's something we'll talk about later here in a bit and compare that to the Division 2. But this really gives me hope in terms of the industry, because this vacuum that's actually open. I mean, many of you are saying EA gives you hope. No. I'm saying this vacuum, if these AAA companies continue to botch it, somebody in terms of an indie game perspective or a small studio will come and eat their lunch. And I am excited about this. I am happy for this. And I'll give you one, solid example that we had this year in the Video Game Awards. The game of the year was Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. That game went against the grain of everything. There was in that time a vacuum for a Dark Souls style game that, had beautiful design, that was unapologetically, that's how you say the word, difficult, and they were not willing to have any room for anybody. I mean, some reviewers did not touch the game because the game was just hard. Skill Up, I'm calling you. Your entire community is begging you to review that game. I don't know. Maybe it's because of time. Maybe the game is just out of style. Or maybe you will review the game. But I just want to see you review the game. I like watching your reviews. So review, Skill Up, review Sekiro, please. When you have some time, sir. Thank you. And this is just something that I feel like a lot of people have, pretty much started to admire in, these development firms that just don't care what anybody says, that will make a core design of a video game that appeals to its community. And I think what hurts most in the case of our game, the Division 1 and the Division 2, is the developers knew what appealed to the community. It was right there in front of them, served on a platter, and they pushed it aside and decided they were going to go do something else. It's that pain that you get. I mean, your parents, where you take your time, you make a dish and you do everything, and then you put it in front of your child, and your child's like, I'm not going to eat it. Well, some parents don't take no for an answer. Let's just leave it at that. Some parents are like, you're going to eat that. You know what I mean? And that's that's where it comes into the picture, where our developers, our development studio, ignored everything that made their first game great and decided to go a different route, which is probably going to be something that they either go back to what it is that will make this game better, or they'll just eventually make their game irrelevant. And this power vacuum, if it doesn't scare Ubisoft now, then they're probably still more removed from reality than, I would have thought that they are. I mean, a lot has gone down. This company was doing so well, heading into 2019. They were doing so well. Their share prices were doubled. Their share prices were $28. At one point, I checked today, and it's gone up by only $2 from the $10 it fell to just a few months ago. That is losing 50% of your stock price. And this is from Google and all that. That is a huge loss. They need to do more than just delay the games that they're saying that they're delaying. They need to overhaul their thinking. They need to overhaul their philosophy of making video games, and they need to come back, because Ubisoft does make some seriously good world building. The only thing that's missing is how uninspired their games can be when they focus on monetization, or when they focus on other things that don't really matter to gamers. And here we are, we're talking about this issue, and there have been some trends with some people trying to take on this division style gaming. There's the Remnant was kind of it wasn't a division necessarily. It was more like fuse the division with Dark Souls in that sense. The division / Dark Souls type deal. It was one of those things that really it tried its best to do it in that sense. There's another game that's been announced. It's actually a game that's actually done by the creators of Black Desert Online, and now Black Desert Online has all its quirks. A lot of the comments I've read and a lot of the community's feeling towards the game is after you get through the first maybe 20-30 hours of the game, they monetize the game in a greedy way and spoil their game. But they are making a game called Plan 8, and this game, from the preview that we saw in this Plan 8 game, the game looks like you just took the division and you threw it into some kind of blender with maybe Titanfall, and then you got maybe some Apex Legends in there, and then you have this game. So what would have inspired a game like this in 2019? The only logical explanation to me is Tom Clancy's The Division. I mean, I don't know many other games that would have, inspired a sci-fi RPG style shooter. Maybe there'll be some loot. All we've seen is just a preview, but it seems like this kind of game wants to take some of that market. Even Ghost Recon lost its own identity and decided that it would try some division type stuff. And that was a miss, because they could have kept both games separate to continue to appeal to the fans in those ecosystems. So I think what's going on is this. Many of these, how do I put it? Many of these corporate, entities, and I'm not saying there's anything bad about corporate entities. I'm just saying that many of these corporate entities are starting to lose track of what reality is. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to wake up to smaller studios just taking away the market share for them. And the reason I feel like smaller studios are going to do the job is because smaller studios are hungry. A lot of times it's easy to forget what, you were like when you were really hungry, and the things that you were looking for when you were hungry. And how that comes into play for you, and how you're going to actually make more. Because once you start getting big, it's easy to lose track. Like EA, they had the audacity to bring out, Star Wars Battlefront 2 and over monetize the game in the presence of gamers and in the presence of Star Wars fans. That takes a lot of gut to just go ahead and tell your gamers, hey, we don't really care about what y'all think anyways. We're just going to go ahead and we're just going to do what we want, and we're going to just botch this entire game. And gamers spat that nonsense out and said, you know what, why don't you keep your game? Why don't you keep your game and then, go do something with it, and we're going to keep our money in our pockets. And I think they learned very fast that that's not the way it works. So as much as I'm, kind of like saying, thinking, the Division, 2 seems to be in a very sketchy place. It might find itself as an irrelevant content piece if it doesn't make the amends that it needs to make. I'm still kind of excited because I've been keeping my ear down and looking around in the industry. And yes, the Black Desert, produced game might not be the game that actually, is the ideal successor of the Division in terms of that, but it will show that other companies are actually watching, and if they're actually watching and learning and seeing the mistakes that the Division is making, they'll eventually start taking, steps to make sure that when they're bringing out something really solid, they don't make those same mistakes and they beat the Division at its game. It will be sad, but to be honest, that's the beauty about competition. Let the strongest man win, or may the strongest win, or survival of the fittest, or whatever it is you want to call it. And I think that's where we need to be. And then it goes back to that question that I asked before. If you were to make your own game, do you think you would do a better job, or how would you do a better job? And I think this is where the conversation can also go. So to the next successor of the Division, whoever is making that game, I encourage you to do a good job. And if you can beat the Division 2, the Division community is going to pay their respects to you if you bring something to the market like this. As much as we love the game, somebody else needs to maybe wake our developers up or wake our publisher up. It might not be the developer's fault. It might be the publisher who is stifling these decisions, but we need a competitor that will come into the market and actually upset it. So that's all I have for today. Thank you very much for your time and audience. Thanks for listening to the video. I appreciate your time and audience, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.